Hi there, and welcome to Unfiltered Solopreneur, the podcast where we share real, unvarnished stories of people who dared to break free from the corporate grind. I'm your host, Nikhil, and I'm passionate about helping solopreneurs like you turn their dreams into reality. What happens when Saturn's cosmic nudge leads a burnt out teacher towards her true calling? In this episode, Britta Buchanan shares how exhaustion led her out of the classroom and into the woo, building a solo practice that blends human design, soulful copywriting, and a deep respect for the messy middle. We talk about trusting your path, editing out the noise, and why real business growth doesn't come from Instagram, but from within. If you're ready to integrate both structure and intuition into your solo journey, this one's for you. See you on the other side. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Unfiltered Solopreneur. I'm Nikhil Vesh, your host, founder, and CEO of Boost Solo. My guest today went from teaching kindergartners in Thailand to guiding creatives through human design and soulful copywriting. She blends the practical with the mystical, helping conscious creatives turn their inner whispers into powerful written voices that resonate. Britta, welcome to the show.
Hi, Nicole. It's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited for our conversation. And if you've seen any episode, I like to dive right in.
Yes,
So,
yes.
you've had quite a fun journey. You started as an elementary school teacher, then you became a human design coach, and now you've added copywriting. So can you talk to us a little bit about what was happening in your life when you realized teaching wasn't the path you wanted to sort of pursue?
I was exhausted. And that's really the crux of it. It was in the human design astrology woo world. We talk about the Saturn return period, which is around the time you turn 30, and that's a period astrologically when Saturn returns back to your natal placement. And if you aren't on the right track, Saturn is going to be like, hey, let's maybe fix things. And so it was right in that Saturn return period for me when I was kind of being the teacher and realizing that it wasn't super aligned for me. And it all kind of happened perfectly in that time period. And I always say we can't make this stuff up. It's just, I mean, for those of us in the woo space, and I know not all of your listeners are in that space. Hello, welcome. I'm from the woo space. It's something that I always say is, and that I hear other people say is, it's just, you can't make it up. And that's why I kind of, I used to be totally not into any of it at all. I was totally didn't believe in astrology, didn't believe in any of it. And then I kind of came around to it when I realized how much I resonated with it. And I couldn't deny that I resonated with it. So anyways, it was right in the Saturn return period. I was super exhausted and just wasn't feeling fulfilled. And I was struggling with my classroom management, and I was at the same time diving deeper into human design and kind of understanding from a human design point why being in the classroom was a struggle for me. And I was also going into some intuitive practices using the Akashic records, which is another thing I do in my business. And that's kind of an intuitive practice. And the more I went down the intuitive woo rabbit hole, the more I was able to see oh, okay, this all makes sense to me. And I'm actually being guided on a different path.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's amazing how many people sort of have told me recently that they've sort of not necessarily sort of believed in a lot of that stuff and then sort of come around to it, but they mix the practical with the mystical, right? I mean, there's a balance people find that I think there's, and I think there's definitely something to it, but we'll talk more about that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that human design was sort of a turning point for you, right? As you started to understand that, learn that a little more. But you also said you were still felt that something was missing in your business approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me a little bit about the evolution where you sort of decided you needed to blend the spiritual with the practical and added the copywriting to it.
Yeah. So I started off my business in 2023, right? Like I gave myself a month to kind of decompress. I left the classroom in June of 2023 and I launched my business in August, like really having no idea what to do, which we can also talk about later. But I started doing human design in the Akashic records, and that's what I offered. And that was all I offered. And as I kind of went down my journey, I started to realize that I did feel like something was missing. It felt like I wasn't complete in what I was doing. I felt really ungrounded. And for anybody who knows anything about the Akashic Record specifically, that's like energy. That's like you're going into an energetic library. And so it's very up in the clouds, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm actually someone who has a lot of earth energy within me. And I needed something a little bit more grounding. So kind of what happened actually was last winter, spring of 2023, 2024, I'm sorry. My mom was preparing to publish a book. She published her first book this year, and she was looking for some support with copywriting, not doing the whole, like not editing the whole draft, because she had like an editor for that, but just like kind of small things, like the stuff that was going to go on Amazon, for instance, on the Amazon, like publishing page, and some small little projects around writing, because I've always been a really good writer. She said, you should, I love, I know you're building a business, and you're for anyone who's built a business, you usually don't start making money right away. So she knew that I was, I could use some extra cash, and she was like, well, why don't you, do this, this work for me for my book? I'll pay you. And I was like, oh, okay, like that's great. I like to write. And so she did, and she was like, oh, you could do this for work. Like, you're really good at this. And I was like, no, like, I don't want to do that. Like, that doesn't feel right for me. Kind of dismissed it. And I, continued to do some of that work for her last spring. And she kept telling me, you'd be like really good at, like, you could do this. You could get paid. People could pay you for this. And I think the thing that really, I was really thrown off by it was I didn't want to just do it for anybody. And at that time, I didn't realize that I could choose my clients. So that's, a journey. And so it kind of, I, went through the spring and the fall or the summer. And then in the fall, I kind of just got this insight, this idea, this download, if you will, that, oh, I could actually do this. I could bring in the writing, the copy, and I could do it through the lens of human design, because I already do human design. And I also that would allow me to kind of filter out the people, the clients that I want to work with. And I do really want to work with the people who have kind of that woo background anyways. And so it all just was like, oh, okay, I could do that. Let's do that. And it kind of fell into place that way, where, my mom kind of planted the seed and in the spring, and I, kind of ignored her, and I had to basically, I might go on my own journey to kind of get to that point of bringing in the copy.
The thing I love about what you said, and it's, I think a lot of solopreneurs sort of would get a good value from, or it's a good lesson for them, is very often the things that we're looking for, we're not going to find by consciously trying to do it, right? It's almost like you have to try different things, and the aha moments happen almost out of left field. Right.
Yeah,
It's something
absolutely.
very similar happened to me. I'm building a workshop, and I spent all of last quarter doing it. And just January, I was like, when I was ready to start putting it out there, like, it's just something is not working. And then I gave up randomly like a talk to these students in part of a global competition. And I had to break something down very simply for them. And then there was suddenly like an aha of what was missing in that workshop. And the two are completely unrelated. So that's what I love about your story, right? It's like, sometimes we overthink things. It's good to try and experiment, but it's good to also do things that you are a little resistant to, or that are not naturally on your path, right? As long as you tie it back to the main part of the business and
Yeah.
don't go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, and I've always been such a good writer. I mean, I majored in English and history in undergrad, and that was basically just 4 years of writing papers. And there's always been a very intuitive way that I do my writing. And I took some courses in college that helped me kind of hone down on how to even bring that intuition out, and but also bring in the skill. And so it makes total sense. And I have been just bringing a lot of it's ended up being a lot of web copy. So I write, the content of people's websites, and through the lens of human design. And it's so beautiful, because a lot of people don't want to do that. And it's great to be able to offer that service to people, but also do it for people who really want that soulful, I'm able to pick those parts out of their human design to really articulate who they are at a deeply soul level on their website. And I do it in a really collaborative way. It's really important that like they're in this with me. And so we work through it together. We meet a couple times on Zoom to just make sure that what's happening is what they like. And so I've been able to make it my own, and it's been really fun to kind of explore that. And I also think it's also given me a deeper appreciation for the human design Akashic Records work I do, because now I feel more grounded, and I'm like, oh, now I like don't feel so like there was part of me that was being like, I don't even like the Akashic Records anymore. And if you're bringing that to your offer, like people are going to sense that.
Right. Yeah, but also in a way, you're helping them bring it to life, right? The value that you bring, and they
Yeah,
can actually see
absolutely.
it in a tangible way. So I love that. And I mean, maybe, and would it be fair to say if your mom hadn't sort of like asked you to do that, you might still not have added
Oh
this.
yeah, I mean, she definitely planted a seed. I got to give
Yeah,
her credit. Got to give my mom credit where credit's due. And they
excellent
say
mom to
mom's
get
always
right.
right.
Yeah,
And it takes sometimes it takes us a minute to get there, but
moms
thanks,
often are.
mom.
Yeah, I've learned that lesson too. Even though we don't, we think now we're adults and we're like, nah, what do you know? Anyway. So teaching is all about patience, adaptability, and sort of breaking down concepts really simply, right? So people get it. So tell me how your teaching background has sort of helped you shape how you guide your clients in finding their voice now.
My teaching background has had a huge impact on
Yeah.
the way that I approach all of my work, because there is such when and I think I've always identified as being a teacher, and I always will identify as being a teacher. And I think what I learned in the classroom is that I don't have to be a classroom teacher to be a teacher. And that's been like one of the biggest points of like liberation for me, is to be able to carry this identity that I have into something new. Um, I think being able to break down those concepts into like manageable chunks is really important, because human design, for instance, is a massive system. There is so much information. And if I'm like going into a reading with someone who doesn't know anything about it, and I just start like throwing things at them, their eyes are going to glaze over and they're not going to get anything from it. And so it's really about being able to meet the client where they're at when you're going through um, human design. When I do my Akashic Records work, there's a lot of like, okay, like I get a lot of downloads through the records. Like, there's a lot of things that come through, and it's like, well, how do I present this in a way that is most effective for the client? Um, and, the way that I bring it through is really important. And, not, you want to be, there's a bit of a stream of consciousness to it when I do the records, but there's also like, okay, how can we pick this apart and make it the most valuable? So I think being able to present the information that I do in a way that is easily digestible is super important. And, knowing that if I'm going into a session with a client for human design, it's like, okay, where are they at? How can I break this down for them? Um, with the copywriting, it's also, some of the clients are super in to wanting to do the human design with me. And, it's really like gauging, like, where are they at? Like, do they want like me to have, like, do they want to go deep and like talk about human design with them on the calls that we do? Or do they not really care, but like they're interested in it, but it's not really they're, they're really wanting to talk more about the copy. So it's being able to like, read the room also. That's a huge part of teaching, like what is needed. And I also bring that in when I'm crafting a package, because I do have some like set things on my website that you can, go and purchase now. Like you could buy a session from me if you wanted, and we could meet. But when I'm crafting like a copy session, for instance, like everyone's going to be really different. And so it's really important for me to, meet with a client and like, what do they want? And what are you hoping to get out of this? Because I want to craft that package that's perfect for you.
Right.
And I think that's also a big thing that I've taken from my teaching, that the parts of differentiation and meeting clients where they're at, and like, how can I reach them in a way that's going to suit them, because what this client needs is not going to be what this client needs. And that's super important.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very important skill, right? And it's one I had to learn too, because it's like for so many years I've been doing, so I understand the theory, I know how to do it myself, but showing somebody else and teaching them how to do it is a very different skill set, right? Because they say that there are a lot of people who can do but can't teach, and there are a lot of people who can teach but can't do, right? So to be able to do both, I think is, especially in solopreneurship, is really important.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the other thing you told me, which I thought was really interesting, is that social media often makes solopreneurship look really effortless and easy, but the reality can be very different, right? So can you talk a little bit about what you sort of believed at the start and how it turned out?
I know we've had conversations about this before, Nikhil. Yeah, and I am a solopreneur that spent a lot of time on Instagram at the beginning. I think it's important to differentiate the different uh, platforms. I know that I recently listened to your most recent podcast. I can't remember her name, but she was talking about, the difference between LinkedIn and Instagram, and that there's more helpful content on LinkedIn. And I think that's super important to, I'm going to reiterate her comment because I agree. And I've only recently started kind of diving into LinkedIn because I've been hearing that it's so great from other entrepreneurs, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should. So I'm someone that spent a lot of time on Instagram,
Right.
and there is so much short form content on Instagram. That's basically all of Instagram, unless you're watching someone's Instagram live, and who does that? I mean, they exist and people do watch them, and yet the majority of the content you're going to see on Instagram is the short reels, carousel posts. You might see somebody's story and you watch people's stories. So it's short form. And there's so much content on Instagram about how you can create, especially when I first started out, about how, and maybe there is still, but I'm not really paying attention to that stuff anymore because I realized it wasn't super helpful, about how you can create a super successful business overnight, or do this and this and this, and you'll have a 10K month. And it kind of gave me this mindset that, I just you need to post on Instagram and people will come. And you say all the time, if you build it, people will not come. And I love that because it's true. I had that mindset that, if I just put stuff out on Instagram, people will see it and they'll want to book with me, and then I'll have 1,000 gazillion dollars, and that's not what happened. And it was such a disservice to me to kind of be absorbing that content, and it gave me this mental permission slip that I didn't need to do much, when what I've learned is that that's not the case. That there is effort that needs to be taken to actually build a business that is successful, and finding out what that looks like for you, using human design, is what that looks like for me is going to look different from you. But effort is required. And I can't just sit around expecting, the money to come in, because that's not how it works.
No, and I think you touched on something earlier too, in terms of the journey also teaches you a lot, right?
Yeah.
So I think that, and that's the thing. It's and that's one of the reasons why I call this Unfiltered, was because I wanted people to know that, it is a beautiful journey, and it is a worthwhile journey. Just don't fall for the social media snake oil of how quick and easy and fast it's going to be. And also I've always felt like if it's that quick and that easy and that fast, you're never going to appreciate it in the right way, right?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think, this last year has really humbled me in a lot of ways. And I've heard it said that building a business is the most profound personal development journey you'll ever go on. And it's I am so grateful for that. It's been very painful at times. And it hasn't been easy. This last year has actually, quite frankly, sucked for me. And yet, I have grown so much, and I'm so much stronger because of it. And I'm very, very grateful for that.
Yeah, and they're building blocks. We all go through it, right? That's the other thing that I want people to know, is we're all in the same boat. I mean, I'm part of this peer group that I love, and we're sort of in all different age groups, right? But every month when we meet, everyone's going through the same problems, right? Everyone's facing the same ups and downs, the same sort of joys, the same sort of highs, the same sort of lows. It's just part of
Yeah,
the journey,
it
like
is
you said.
absolutely part of the journey. And I think, learning to celebrate it all. I mean, obviously that doesn't mean like bypassing the tough stuff. We want to feel our feelings. We want to acknowledge the sucky times, because if we don't, then it's not serving. And yet I think, in hindsight, being able to celebrate it all, even the hard stuff, is like, yeah, that made me who I am today. Like, that is such a incentive to keep moving forward.
Yeah, and I always think of it, and I think Mandela said this better, but it was like, I always feel like you've never really, nothing's ever bad unless you walk away without a lesson, right?
Yeah.
Because there's inherent value in learning that you don't get otherwise without doing. You can
Yeah,
read a textbook and you don't absorb, your brain doesn't absorb it, our being doesn't absorb it the same way as having actually lived the experience, right? So I think there's a lot of value
absolutely.
in that, which people don't talk enough about. But
Yeah, my human design mentor always says you're either winning or learning, and it's so true. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. I think I forget Mandela's quote now, but it was sort of similar, but it was, yeah, that's exactly right. So I want to talk a little bit now about building your personal brand. So,
mhm.
what's been the most challenging aspect of explaining what you do to people who might be skeptical of the sort of, you call it woo woo, I call it spiritual approach?
I think the biggest block for me has actually been the fear of speaking out about it. Because there is, you know, a lot of people out there who still don't really get this world, who don't really understand the woo. And that's okay. Like, I'm not expecting to convert them. And yet I think there was just this like fear of like, well, what do they think of me? Like, maybe will they think I'm crazy? Like, and so that kept me a long time from speaking out about what I do, and about speaking out about it confidently. Because there was like, what do people think? And I had to kind of reach a point where I was like, well, why am I living my life for other people, for other people? Like, let them think what they want to think. And if they don't like what I have to say, they can unfollow me. They don't have to engage with me. And that will, the more people who kind of fall off of my train because they don't like what I have to say, that leaves room for the people who actually do want to hear from me to come in. And so I think that's been the most challenging part. There also has been, needing to explain explain what I do, and just even learning about, how I market myself on my website. I think I'm constantly still playing with that. But, I had someone a number of months ago say to me, like, I went on your website and it says you do human design, the Akashic records, and I don't know what those things are. And like, can you please tell me? But I was like, oh, like this realization that I'm putting these services on my website, but like, if people don't know what
No.
they are, they're not going to want to stick around and learn, so how can I market myself in a way that is accessible to people? Because obviously I'm going to be attracting people in the woo space who already know what these things are, and that's great. Like, I don't need to explain to them. But if I want to, maybe attract people who are new to it and who might be interested in my services if they actually knew what they were,
Yeah.
then I have to explain, like, I have to explain it to them and make it accessible. And so I think it part of it has been just trusting myself to speak my truth and not caring what other people think. But then the other part of it has been, not everybody has heard of human design. Not everybody has heard of the Akashic records. Like, how do I talk about this in my web copy in a way that will kind of ease them into it in a sort of digestible way that they get it?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, you touched on something else. And in fact, the episode you're talking about is with Julia, I believe. She
Yeah,
was,
yeah, that's her name.
and one of
Really
the,
enjoyed it.
yeah,
She's
it was,
she had some great
she's awesome.
points.
She's awesome. And one of the other things she said was also, and I've struggled with this too, is like stepping out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to really put yourself out there. And I know and it's very easy because we're human. We assume that we should position ourselves, we should talk about ourselves in the way we think we want our clients what our clients are looking for, right? When it's actually the opposite.
Mhm.
Because if you're true to who you are and you're authentic, you will find the clients who are attracted to you. And
Yeah.
that's really the secret here, is not trying to attract everybody. And
Yeah.
but that's a lesson you learn on this journey, right? I mean, I do this for a living, and I've sort of been on this journey of struggling with that. And then the second thing is also putting yourself out there authentically is not easy when the world is so, we talked about social media, and I think I'm going to come to another post you did last week on LinkedIn. We'll talk about that. But social media has also created this sort of cosmetic world out there, right? Which makes it harder to stand out from that manufactured authenticity, as I call it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I definitely think, that was something I was doing at the beginning where it was like, oh, kind of just copying other people, like seeing what they were doing and kind of doing the same thing, having the same kind of posts as them. And recognizing that if I want to create my brand, I need to find out who I am and like, how do I want to put myself out there? And I think that's something that takes time. I mean, as you're growing a business, like you can't, it, you have an idea of what you want to bring when you first get started. And yet through the journey, it kind of becomes more like, oh, okay, I'm actually like, this is actually where I really excel, or this is really what I want to focus on. Like this whole idea of creativity and supporting people with their creativity, like came in the fall, and it was super new. And it was the thing that I feel like it kind of ignited the interest. It was like, oh, this is actually really exciting for me. Like I feel like I was kind of like, there's something missing in my business, and bringing in the creativity and the copy was like, this is it. This is what was missing. But we don't always have that right away. Sometimes it does take some journeying to really be like, okay, this is where I really want to put my focus, and this is really what I want my brand to be about. And I think it's giving ourselves that grace and that patience as solopreneurs, is that, who we really want to be out in the world and what we want our brand to be. It's going to take time to evolve. It's not going to come together overnight. And I think that's another thing, with the social media, and like it all comes together overnight. There's this like, you can do it so quickly. And it's not just the making money part that is part of that, but it's also just like the whole imagery that you want to bring. Like, who are you? Like, what are you bringing? Like, it's not even about your service, but it's like, what makes you unique? All of it takes time. And when you're starting out, and I think for me, it was like, I didn't realize all of that at the beginning. And now it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'm seeing the progression and how things have evolved over time. And that's a beautiful part of the journey.
Yeah. Or we could ask mom. That's the other thing I realized, right?
And
But
I think that's a big thing that I learned as well in my journey, is I was super hyper independent. I was like, I can do this
yeah.
all by myself. I can, I don't need any help. And there was also a fear of asking for help ingrained in that. But, learning that none of us function like, we need people. We are human beings, and we are social creatures, and we all need support. But especially if you're in the solopreneur world, like we rely on each other. We rely on each other for, helping each other get clients, being referral partners, collaborations, partnerships, and just having friends that you can talk to in the space you get it. It's like, this was something that I put off I don't want to say put it off, because I didn't even realize I should be doing it, but it was like, oh my gosh, the power of other people. I was sitting alone, like in my apartment, doing it all by myself for so long, thinking I could handle it, and I really, really couldn't.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Because I mean, there is this notion that if you're a solopreneur, you are on your own, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the thing is, like you said, and that's why I think community is a lifeline, right? You have to have it to succeed on this journey. And I always say you need angels and you need truth tellers. The angels are the people who will support you no matter what, right? They'll always be their cheerleaders, and the truth tellers are the ones who will tell you, you know what? Yeah, that copy doesn't quite make sense to me. You need both, right? So, but
Absolutely.
yeah, and community, I think, is sort of the lifeblood of successful solopreneurship. So, and that's one of the things I want to build around Boost Solo too. So, and also I love what you were saying about evolution. I remember one of my other guests also mentioned to me, and I love this notion, which is, and it's true, is who you are 6 months, who you are when you started is going to be very different from who you are 6 months from now and 3 years from now. And that's just part of the learning and the evolution and sort of, product market fit is the Silicon Valley word for it, but it takes time to figure
Yeah.
out, who your client is and what your offering is. And I'm not talking about, changing it completely and suddenly deciding I'm going to, make jeans. That's like, but it's really finding the focus and the nuggets, if you like, in terms of the value you bring and the need out there.
Yeah, and I think being okay with that, because I think there's this idea out there that you start a business and you want to stay consistent. Like, obviously you want to be consistent in showing up, but it's like, you have this image and you want it to be the same so that people know that you're trustworthy or something. And but it's, especially at the beginning, it's like, how can we possibly know what we want to bring? How can we possibly stay the same when we're just getting started and just finding out like what works? And so giving ourselves the permission to allow ourselves to change over time. And even just, obviously I think we're more likely to change in the first couple of years of our business when we're really getting established, but even like, down the road, like allowing yourself to switch and shift and change. And like you said, it's not like you're going to completely change what you do and like start, go from doing XYZ to like something completely different, but it's like allowing yourself to show up within it, allowing your offerings to shift and change depending on the season you are in your life. I mean, maybe at the beginning you are really like doing a lot of one-on-one sessions and that feels really, fulfilling for you. But then as time goes on, you want to switch and, you want to focus more on, maybe group containers or memberships, or like, it's just where I think it's important to allow ourselves to be fluid as solopreneurs, because who we are today is not who we're going to be in 10 years, and what our priorities are not going to be the same. And, it's important to allow ourselves that ability to grow and change and shift, and to allow our business to do that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautifully said. So let me ask you now, in terms of when you first started, who did you think was or how did you define your ideal client, and how has that changed over time?
There's always been a big focus on depth for me. It's in my human design chart, and it's definitely a part of what I really value is people who want to go deep. And so, something that I usually, whenever I post on social media, like the very first words I always say are, "Hey, inner seeker." That's kind of like my, you get the people in, and that's really the people that I want to attract is the inner seeker. And that's always been who, kind of at the core, my ideal client is like an inner seeker who wants to go deep. As my business Aligned and Undefined has evolved, and I have kind of been placing this emphasis on the creativity, it's still the inner seeker, but it's the inner seeker who is really looking to revitalize their creativity in some way. And creativity is, I think, we think of creativity as like, oh, I'm an artist or a writer, or I do something creative. But I think creativity is a way of being. I mean, creativity allows us to move through life and have new ideas and, move with more ease, because we're letting in new ideas and new ways of thinking and new ways of being. And so the inner seeker who's really looking to revitalize their creativity, whether that's in their personal life, their professional life, whether they consider themselves to be an artist or whether they don't consider themselves to be an artist. And with the copy specifically, that is solopreneurs, usually in the personal development space, who wanting to go deep to write their copy. And so, but it really has evolved from just being the inner seeker to being the inner seeker who is looking to revitalize their creativity. And I usually attract women who, are wanting to do that work with me, but I'm not exclusive to women. I know some, women coaches. I don't call myself a coach. I call myself a creative consultant, but some women in this space really want to work with other women, and that's great. I love working with anybody. My I usually work with women just because they will come to me. I have occasionally the man who comes and wants to go deep with me. But yeah, it's really the inner seeker. It started off being just the inner seeker, and now it's the inner seeker who really wants that support and revitalizing their creativity.
And you might have touched on this, but it sounds like the I love your positioning about revitalizing their creativity. Did that come from your own journey?
100%.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I think I have been through periods in my life where I did feel really stuck, and where
Yeah.
even just the period where I was feeling stuck in, just doing the Akashic Records in human design, that felt not like there was something missing. And then bringing in the, the copy and the creativity aspect, like that just opened up a whole new world for me. And I recently moved from the DC area where I lived for 8 years back to Minnesota, where I'm from. And even in that, just like changing the environment, it was like such a birth of new creativity flowing from me being in a different space. And so absolutely 100%. And I do think we tend to, our greatest journey is kind of what we start to offer to the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I always say that's like, if if you've been through something, there's nothing more authentic than that, right? Because you're not selling something out of a textbook, out of theory, but actually a lived experience, which I think resonates with people, because that's what, again, people resonate with reality, not cosmetic perfection, right? Which we talked about.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. So you I think you posted something on LinkedIn like a week ago, and we're going back to social media for a minute. But you also talked about how the internet's turned us into relentless consumers and made us robotic, I think were the words you used.
Yeah.
Mm. So how has this perspective shaped your approach to creative work, both for yourself and your clients?
Really, I think a couple things. Being
Yeah.
really mindful for me about what I'm consuming. Um, because I have been in phases of my life where I was a little robotic, and kind of even just early on in my business, some of the people I was associating with, um, just kind of mimicking them almost, or like doing some things because they were doing it. And it wasn't healthy for me. And some of those people I kind of had to pull away from. But I do think that we are in a social media world. We're in a world where you can go on your phone and anything is available to you. You can find anything. If you're looking for something that supports your beliefs about whatever you believe in, you can find it. And, you know, and if you're looking for a how-to video about, how to make something, you can find it. And I'm not poo-pooing how-to videos. I mean, sometimes, like, practically speaking, you are trying to build something that you bought from IKEA, and it would be good to have somebody to show you. But I think there is an element of that does make us really robotic. I mean, so many people, the first thing they do when they wake up in the morning is scroll through their phone. And,
Yeah.
how is that influencing our day if the first thing you look at is your phone? I just think that there is so much more to life and so much more to the way we can creatively move through the world. And as beautiful as social media is for connecting with people, I mean, I've met so many people on the internet, including yourself. and and it's a blessing in so many ways. It's also such a distraction, and keeps us away from, and can keep us away from what really matters if we're not careful. And so for me, it's just been really mindful about where am I showing up? Where am I consuming? I have really strict boundaries around social media. I do not go on social media on the weekends. And I only, um, you know, there's a couple hour window that I give myself for, Instagram and LinkedIn. And I personally, I feel it in my body. If I'm on social media too much, I just start to feel really drained and really like overstimulated and information overload. And so that for me is just like, okay, it's time to go. But yeah, I have really strict boundaries around what I consume, when I consume it, who I'm around. And because all of that is impacting our ability to think for ourselves and really bring out our own creative gifts. And I do think we all have creative gifts. I mean, not everybody identifies, like I said, as an artist or a writer, and yet we all have some way of creatively moving through the world. And the more that we can tune into that, the more that, we live in a world that's really messed up in a lot of ways. And the more that we can tune into our own creative gifts, the more that we're able to, serve the world in the way that we're meant to. And so I think it's really about, when is the social media, when is all the content that we have access to, when is that beneficial?
Yeah.
And when is it not? I'm not saying it's all bad. I mean, I use it too, but it's like, to what extent is it serving us?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I love something you said there, which was like, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, but we're connected like 24/7 now, but we're not making connections anymore, right? And I think that's really what we're missing with social media is like there's this idea that we're connected to people, but we're not really. Liking a post
No,
doesn't, you don't know the person, you don't know about their life, you're not really making a human or emotional connection by just following people and commenting and doing that kind of stuff. And we've almost sort of substituted that for connection, which also explains why there's so much depression and so many issues now, right?
absolutely.
Generationally. Yeah.
I was just even thinking earlier today, like, I have so many friends on Facebook, like probably over 600. And yet, how many of those people do I actually like? They're
No.
called friends on Facebook, but like, how many of them are actually my real friends? Like, some of them I haven't talked, the majority of them I haven't talked to in years. And it's just, this filter of social media and like, oh, all the friends and all the likes, but it's so fake at the end of the day. Like, you have 1,000 followers who give you 100,000 likes. And you were talking about this as well with Julia. Julia is her name.
Julie.
Yeah, Julie. Okay, yeah, Julie. Where it's like, just because you have 1,000 followers, they will give you 1,000 likes, that doesn't translate. In the business world, that doesn't necessarily translate to business.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just so important, I think, to consider that, especially when you're going into becoming a solopreneur and considering, how do I want to use social media? I don't think it's bad to use social media to boost your business.
No.
But if you are seriously thinking that getting 1,000 followers is going to lead to $100,000, like, I wouldn't bank on it.
No. No. That needs to be said almost in every episode, I think, because there is this notion again that like just people liking posts do not convert to business. So but
Absolutely.
yes, as you said, there is a role for it to play, and and have a game plan for how you use it rather than don't let it use you, right? That's what I would say. um,
Yeah.
so now being a teacher, you sort of follow lesson plans. It's a very structured environment, but being a solopreneur entrepreneur, you sort of you're writing the rule book as you go, right? So what's been the hardest part for you about breaking free from that type of structure to, I guess I call it, embracing the unknown?
um, I think finding what works for me. Um, in human design, I am a reflector, and that is, for those of you unfamiliar with human design, that's the rarest type. It also means that I work differently than a lot of people. And I think really finding out what works for me has been my biggest journey,
Right.
because there's a lot of conditioning there about how I'm supposed to work. And really finding that all of that conditioning is actually getting in the way of trusting myself. I think the biggest thing has been trusting myself and really trusting myself. Um, Not just saying that, because I've been saying that for like years, and kind of realizing over the past couple of months that, oh, I've been saying it, but I actually don't. So really trusting myself and trusting that the way that I can move through the world is going to work. because teaching is very structured and there's something very safe in that. It's like, I know it's going to happen every day. I might not like going into the classroom every day and teaching kids because it's exhausting, and yet I know what it's going to look like. And finding my own flow has been huge. And I think that is, it's, just thinking back, I went to visit a friend this weekend who I hadn't seen in a couple of years. And she said, I don't think I could be a solopreneur because I don't know if I'd be able to, keep those structures in place for myself. And I think that in itself is a limiting belief, like saying, I don't think I could do that. But it's also calling my friend out here. I think that's a limiting belief. But it's like redefining, what does that look like for you?
Right.
Because you are responsible for yourself. And that is also quite daunting. It's like, if I don't, I'm the only one who's going to be bringing in my income for me. And if I can't do that, or if I'm not taking the appropriate action, that's not going to happen. So there's this dauntingness. There's a feeling of dauntingness. I don't know if that's a word. Whatever. There's a feeling of, it's daunting to have to do that. And there's a lot of pressure that we can put on ourselves. And I think for me, it's kind of been, yes, a certain amount of pressure is useful because we do want to be accountable for ourselves, but to what extent is that also not serving me? Because
Right.
I also want to be taking care of myself, and I want to make sure that I'm getting, enough sleep and enough time with loved ones and enough downtime. And it's finding that balance, and it's not always an easy answer, but I think leaning deeper into, and this also goes back to, the overconsumption of like seeing what other people are doing, like how are other people being solopreneurs. And yes, there's value in learning from others, because like there's a lot that I didn't know when I started this journey, and I'm really grateful for the stuff I've learned from other people in this business, not this business, but in this world. um and at the same time, we need to be able to step back from everything that we've learned as well and think, okay, but what actually works for me? And that requires trial and error, because we don't always know what, like, especially if you've been working for a company that, has strict rules. It doesn't matter if you're a teacher, if you're coming from corporate or wherever, like every, if you're working for somebody else, they have expectations for you.
Right.
And coming out of that and being able to find, okay, I was, now it's time for me to do all of this, but how do I do it? It does require, I think, some introspection. I'm all about introspection, like, the inner seeker.
Yeah.
It requires some introspection and some honesty, self-honesty, like, what is my way of doing things, and what can I take from others that is useful, and what can I, maybe throw away. And I think there's a lot of self-trust in entrepreneurship, solopreneurship. I think there's a lot of really, self-reflection and self-honesty about what am I capable of? What can I do? How can I do it? And going from there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love one of the things you said, which is like you can learn from other people, but you don't, it's like getting advice. It's good to get advice, but you don't have to take every bit of advice you've been given, right? You can kind of pick and choose what makes sense for you. And again, there's no one size fits all for this, right? You kind of have to figure that out. And it's always good to learn from other people, but don't try and like copy exactly what they're doing, because it's probably not going to work for you because you're not the same person. None of us are. So we're all unique individuals. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So if we were to meet again, say 5 years from now, what do you want to have achieved?
Hmm. I want to have a successful business that is supporting as many people as possible. Um, and I want to be spreading my light in a way that is supporting as many people as possible. I have a dream for my business. Not there yet, but, and I don't know if I'll make it in 5 years, but down the road, I really do want to be able to offer scholarships to people to work with me who may not otherwise be able to afford to. And I really want to, yeah, it's all about spreading the light and helping people to come back to their true and authentic selves, to find that creativity within them. Because I really do believe that the more people who are connected to their authentic inner spark, the more that we will be able to heal this world that is really, really broken. And it's one person can't do it. We need as many people as possible to step up their game and spread their light. And you don't have to be, in the healing woo world to do that. You can, as long as you are, moving through the world, doing your best work, putting your best foot forward in your most authentic way, you're helping us. And we want more people out there helping our world. So that's where I want to be in 5 years, is helping as many people as possible ignite their inner spark so that they can go out there and do what they're meant to do in the world.
Well, that's a really noble goal, and I hope you get there, because I agree. It's like, if people, the sooner people realize that the only thing you have power to change in this world is yourself. That's it. And if everyone changed themselves, you're right, the multiplier effect would be unbelievable, right? We would wipe away half our problems. So I
Yeah.
agree with you.
There's a
So I
lot of
hope you get there.
blaming out there and a lot of victim mentality. And I think that's kind of seeped into the collective consciousness. And so
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily anyone's fault that that's kind of what's going on. And yet it really doesn't serve. And we do want to, we're the only ones that can really, we're responsible for ourselves, and that's it.
Exactly. So, if you could offer one piece of advice to somebody who wants to start their solopreneur journey, now that you've been on it for a little while, you've been through the ups and downs, what would you say to them?
I think really recognizing that there are really, really great resources to learn how to run a business. And there are also places where you will be misguided. And there's a lot of that on social media. I'm going to call Instagram out. There's a lot of that on Instagram. And to be really mindful and really discerning about where you're getting your information from. Because if you build it, they will not come. And you want to be putting yourself out there in spaces and places that will be supportive to you, and you want to be learning from people who you trust and who are vetted resources, and to get out there and to meet people and to do the networking, and to, you know networking has been really supportive to me. I mean, it's how I'm here on this podcast. I met Nikhil on a networking call. So, like, do the networking, meet the people who are going to support you. Be really discerning about the information you take in, and trust that you got this. I think that was more than one piece of information, but it is what it is.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. That's great advice. So, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners that we haven't covered, Britta?
um, I would say that this journey can sometimes feel very challenging, especially if you came in like I did, expecting things to just kind of take off. And so I think and this is something I've been working on in my own personal life, is like getting away from the expectation mentality of how things are going to be,
Right.
and really focusing every day on what you can do. What can you do each day to work toward, to bring in success? Because it's the little things that we do each day that make a big difference. And we often underestimate the little things. The little things, like commenting on someone's post on LinkedIn and just like saying, like, you did a really great job, or that's a really cool thing that you're doing. Like, that kind of thing has impact, because that person sees you and is like, oh my gosh, they're congratulating me. They feel so good about that. There's like a deepening of respect, and, a deepening of the relationship. It's like those little things over a long period of time, those little things that we do each day for our business, whether it's going on social media and cheering people on, or, checking the finances, even when it's scary, and like getting that in order, like the little things that we do each day are the things that make the biggest difference.
Yeah, I know. I totally agree. I think that's really great advice. And I don't know if do you know Sahil Bloom?
I don't think so.
Okay, check him out. He's like a content creator, but he sort of sends a weekly note. But he said something this week in his newsletter, which I loved, which he called it working in the darkness. That's sort of what you have to do, right? And those are the things the little things that maybe you think nobody notices, but they sort of add up ultimately, right? But no, that's beautiful. All right. Well, that brings us to our rapid fire round. So I'm just going to throw a couple of questions at you and just give us what comes to mind. All right. So what's one writing exercise you recommend to anyone feeling creatively blocked?
One writing exercise for people feeling creatively blocked. Honestly, this might sound kind of cheesy, but I think a gratitude exercise is so powerful. 3 things that I'm grateful for, because like I said, going back to the little things, it's most of the time it's the little things that come to my mind when I'm writing. And when we can really tune in to the things that we're grateful for right now, I think that gives us an inspiration for moving forward, because gratitude is just so powerful in, even if we don't have a lot right now, even if, you're a solopreneur who is like struggling financially, or like feels like you don't have a lot of resources. Like, there are things that we have air to breathe, water to drink. There's always something to be grateful for.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it clearly unlocks another part of your brain too, I think. So if your human design type was a cocktail order, what would it be?
My human design was a cocktail order. It would be the crafty chameleon. And you just don't know what you're going to get, because this is really my human design type in a nutshell. It's, there's a fluidity in it, in my human design type. Kind of an inconsistency in energy, which can sound like a bad thing, but when you embrace it, it's really beautiful. So the crafty chameleon, you don't know what you're going to get in your order. You don't know what is going to be in there, but trust the process and it might be amazing.
Love that. What's your favorite way to reconnect with yourself when you feel out of alignment?
I love to go into meditation. I do meditation. I have a daily yoga practice, and getting into nature has been huge for me. I live in Minnesota right now, so it's not always the best to go outside, but I try my best because it is so rejuvenating.
That's great. Yeah, and I think people need to do more of that. What's one word your best friend would use to describe you? Maybe the one who called you out. You can give her the last word. The one you called out, rather.
Kind-hearted. She said, we were talking, she was saying, I'm a kind-hearted soul.
That's great. What's a guilty pleasure TV show or book that always inspires you?
A guilty pleasure TV show or book. I'm watching Ted Lasso right now. I've never watched it before, and I really like it. It's super inspiring. So we'll say that.
Yeah, I love it. One of my favorite shows. So I think it won't disappoint. Well, it's been awesome chatting with you, and thank you so much for sharing your journey and all the insights and all the ups and downs. I really appreciate it.
It's been so great. Thank you so much for having me, Nikhil.
Britta's story reminds us that solopreneurship isn't just a business journey, it's a profound personal evolution. She didn't simply switch careers, she completely reshaped how she defines structure, success, and self-trust. Here are my key takeaways. Growth happens in the unexpected. One of Britta's biggest shifts came from what she first resisted. Her mom suggested copywriting, something she dismissed, until it became the bridge between her intuitive work and tangible value. Solopreneurs, your best ideas won't always come from methodical planning, but from seemingly unrelated experiences. Stay open to what feels unrelated or off path. Just make sure to anchor them back to your core. Trust is earned internally. Britta reminded us that trusting yourself isn't just a nice mantra, it's a muscle you build through action, reflection, and honesty. Self trust is earned. not assumed. Make decisions, observe the outcome, and keep tuning into what feels aligned for you, not the algorithm or what is trending for others. Your business evolves as you do. As Britta evolved, so did her offer. From inner work to creative revitalization, that shift didn't come from a rebrand, it came from real life transformation. Your greatest business advantage lies in your unique journey. Your offer doesn't have to be static. Let your business grow with you. That's not pivoting, it's alignment. Social media is a tool, not a strategy. Britta learned the hard way that Instagram's promise of overnight success is largely a mirage. She believed if I post, they will come, until she realized visibility doesn't equal traction. Remember that likes and followers rarely translate to direct revenue. Use social media as a tool with clear boundaries and intentions rather than letting it use you. Little things compound. Britta emphasized the momentum isn't built in big moves, it's built in small ones. A comment, a connection, a DM, they all add up over time. Remember, consistency compounds. Keep showing up when no one is looking. That's how businesses get built in the dark. Thank you for listening to Unfiltered Solopreneur. If you got value from today's episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another solopreneur who needs this message. Until next time, keep breaking free from the corporate grind, and remember, your story is your most powerful asset. Live solo or die corporate.